Hello again and welcome back to our course on Project 2013. In this section we're going to take a quick tour of the Project Workspace. Now many of the aspects of this will be covered in a lot of detail as we go through the course, but I just want to familiarize you with some of the terminology and some of the parts of the screen that are going to be very important in the early stages of the course. Now the first thing to say is that I've already mentioned this start screen, and there is an option, as we'll see a little bit later on, to suppress the showing of this start screen and, for example, to go straight into the last project that you were working on. Now I normally have the start screen enabled. It's a pretty useful way of starting up project in my opinion, but that may not suit you, and as we'll see later when we look at project options, there's a lot of customization that's possible with the Project Workspace. When you've been using Project for a little while, then it's worth taking a little bit of time just to make sure that you've got it customized to your particular preferences and requirements. Now on this start screen we've got an area on the left that lists the recent projects that we've worked on. We haven't worked on any projects yet, so that area is empty. There's an area below that that says Open Other Projects, which gives us access to a pretty standard Windows browser to open other projects either on this device or available from this device. You may, for example, open a project on a network or on an attached device, maybe a memory stick or a DVD or something like that. Now in the top right hand corner of the start screen you have a pretty standard set of buttons. There's the help button that we've already talked about, and then the normal Windows buttons. So there's a minimize there, and because I'm in normal view here there's a maximize button and of course a close button, and with each of these there's an available screen tip just to remind me what each of the buttons does. Now bear in mind that different people will have acquired their copy of Project 2013 in different ways, maybe registered for a trial version, purchased a version. There will be a Microsoft account that you are currently running Project 2013 under, and the account that I'm currently running it under is shown there. You can switch account. You can run your copy of Project 2013 under different accounts, and one of the reasons for doing that would be that you may run it under a different account that gives you access to additional or different services from Microsoft. Now looking at the possibilities here is outside the scope of this course, so for the purposes of this course I'll assume that you have a Microsoft account that you are running this under and that it's shown there, and you can see mine in the top right hand corner of the start screen. Now let's look at these big buttons on the start screen. The one that's highlighted at the moment is Blank Project, and you'll use that a lot when you start a new project from scratch. So you're really just going to start typing the details of a project into Project 2013 from a blank starting point, a bit like starting a new document in Word. To the right of that, the next option there is New from Existing Project. Now if the sort of projects that you manage tend to be a little bit repetitive, you may find that there's a pattern in your projects and you like to take, say, the last job that you did, the last project you managed, and use that as a starting point for the next one. Well, that's where this particular option comes in handy, because if you click that you can choose an existing project and use that as your starting point for another one. Now that's the basic idea behind templates that I'm going to talk about in a moment as well. Below that is another option, New from Excel Workbook, and this enables you to import task type information, for example, that you have in an Excel workbook, and use that as the basis for a Microsoft project. Now that's somewhat outside the scope of this course, but I'm going to give you a straightforward example of that later on. To the right of that is a quite similar option, but this relates to SharePoint task lists. Now if you've used Microsoft SharePoint you'll be familiar with the concept of a SharePoint task list, and like an Excel workbook you can use a SharePoint task list as a starting point for a Microsoft project. Now that is definitely outside the scope of this course. The next option just says Welcome to Project, and this is a little sort of wizard demonstration of creating a very basic project and just a description of the main steps in creating a project. I'm not going to go through that now. It's a good one for you to try, particularly if you've never used Project before, but it is very basic, and everything that's in it we're going to be covering during the course anyway. So if you are an absolute beginner, give that a little run through and it might give you a nice introduction to some of the basic concepts of using Project. Beyond that, what we have is a list of templates. And templates are basically what in older terminology would be called boilerplates. They're sort of model projects. They don't have any specifics in them. They don't have specific dates and times, specific costs or anything like that. But they give you a model that you can work from. Now the ones that are shown on the start screen, the first one there is a software development plan. Then there's a new product launch. That's a bit more of a sort of a marketing related project. Create a budget, commercial construction, residential construction, a market research schedule, and so on. Now there are quite a few of those there, but in addition, if you look at the top of the start screen, there is a box here where you can search for an online template. So if you have a particular topic in mind, a particular need for a project template, you can type a certain term in here and then click on the search button, and Project 2013 will search Microsoft.com to find supporting materials including project templates. Now there's some suggested searches here: business, construction, marketing, products, but you're certainly not restricted to those. The main example we're going to use on this course is a construction project. So I'm going to type in here construction. I could in fact just click on that link if I wanted to, but I'm going to type in here construction and then click on the search button and see what it comes up with. And what it comes up with is a list of, well, there are two templates, the ones that we saw on the start screen, one for a residential construction and one for a commercial construction, and I could use either of those as the starting point for my project. But it also gives me links through to documents related to other Office applications. So there are 6 links to Excel documents, 7 to PowerPoint, 2 to Outlook, 4 to Word. Let's just click on the Excel ones. Notice we get a list of 6 Excel workbooks, and any of these may help as well. These are not Microsoft projects, these are Excel workbooks. So for instance, there's a construction proposal, there is a home construction budget. That'll be useful to see the sort of costs associated with home construction, and there are various other things: construction bid form, inventory list, etc. So that's a pretty useful facility whereby you can search Microsoft.com that way to help you with your particular requirement for creating a project. Now when you finish looking at these, you use the back button, the top left there. This is a browser based system as well. Click on back and that takes us back to the start screen again. Now I should just point out to those of you who are using Touch that we haven't done anything unusual here. I'm going to come to Touch in more detail in a couple of sections time, but all we're doing so far is tapping on controls such as this search button and then typing into boxes. So exactly the same there with Touch. You would just type in the term that you wanted to search for and then tap on the search button. So to complete our look at the project workspace, let's create a blank project. Either click on blank project or tap if you're using Touch, and look at the bottom left hand corner of the screen just after we do this. A message appears there: new tasks are created in manually scheduled mode. You're going to see that quite a bit, and we'll come back to that in a lot of detail later on. But for now I want you to just ignore that message each time it appears. And what we have now is the project workspace in front of us. Now the one that you see may have differences to mine for all sorts of reasons, so I'm not going to be very specific at this stage about exactly what you can see, but I will point out the main areas and then we'll look at the details as we go through the course. So let's start right at the top of the workspace here, and in the top left we have something called the Quick Access Toolbar, and I'm going to look at that in detail a little bit later on. But basically it's a customizable set of buttons that give you one-click access to specific functions, such as saving the current project. At the top on the right you have the buttons we've talked about already: help, minimize, maximize, close, and then you also have a set of buttons immediately below that related to the current project. You can have more than one project open at a time in Microsoft Project, and also identification for the current account. That's me, Toby Arnott, there. Now this whole area, excluding the button with file written on it, the green one, is basically the ribbon. Basically the ribbon contains the commands that you execute to do particular things like delete a task or remake your schedule or update the status of a task in your project. Below the ribbon we have the timeline. Now the timeline can be switched on and off, and this is one of the areas where what you see may be different from what I see. Currently the timeline is switched on, but this is a completely empty project. There are no tasks in it, so there's nothing shown in the timeline. There is a start date, which is today. I'm doing this on Monday, March the 18th, and there's a finish date, which is the same day, because again I haven't put any tasks in, so I have a project with no duration at the moment. Below that is the main window area where most of the project information is shown. And on the left, on its side, you can see it says Gantt chart. You'll probably use Gantt charts quite a bit with Microsoft Project. And as you'll see in a short while, what the Gantt chart normally consists of is two parts. On the left, you have what's called a table. And this is the list of information about the tasks in your project. And on the right you have the Gantt chart itself, which will basically be a pictorial representation of your project. Now we're going to look at a sample project shortly, and then when we do I'll explain in more detail about the table and about the chart itself. Right at the bottom of the window there you can see the status bar, and the status bar contains on the left assorted information about the current project. Now the current project is empty, so there isn't an awful lot of interesting information to show, so there's not a lot shown there, but we'll look at the status bar in quite a bit of detail a bit later on. And then on the right hand end there are various buttons and a slider to control what you actually see in that main window, and again we'll be coming back to that a little bit later on as well. So we've got the ribbon, we've got the timeline, we've got the main window, which will often show the Gantt chart, but it can often show other things as well, and then at the bottom the status bar. Now there's one other very important aspect of the project workspace to mention here, and that is Backstage View. If you click on that green button towards the top left hand corner of the window that says File, click on that, it takes you into Backstage View. Now from Backstage View you basically do the management, the administration of project. Loosely speaking, this is where you do the things related to projects that aren't actually in the individual projects themselves. So it's the sort of things you do here are open a project, one you worked on earlier on, or save a project, or print some of the details of a project, or share a project with somebody else. You also, very importantly, as we'll see in a couple of sections time, you can set your project options, which basically enables you to customize project, and you also have an account button here where you can change the account that you're running project under. I mentioned that earlier on in the course. Now Backstage View we're going to look at piece by piece as we go through the course, but getting access to Backstage View is via that File button, the green button with the word File on it. And to get back from Backstage View into the project we're working on, we click this back button up here, the one with the left arrow on it, takes us back into an individual project. So that's it on the project workspace for now. There are quite a few more things, but we'll cover those as we go through the course. That's the end of this section. I'll see you in the next one.